Excellent. Ready? Hi there, welcome to this meeting, our extraordinary council meeting, being held here at Newton Leeds Pavilion on 30th of July. Apologies for the past name. I am Nathaniel Kelly Wilson and I will be chairing this meeting. Before we start, there are some housekeeping points to note for those in the room. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave as quickly as possible. The fire exits are located to the front and rear of this room. The toilets are specified in the community hall. Please could you turn off your mobile phone or put it to silent. We want everyone to be able to hear, so please respect whoever is speaking by not chatting amongst yourselves. I'd also add, it's very hot in this room tonight, so if we can please limit the amount of conversation that we have and not repeat what other people are saying, just add things so we can hopefully get away and get to much cooler homes or air-conditioned cars. Also, you should be aware that this meeting is being recorded and the recording may be streamed on our social media channels. We're especially pleased to welcome members of the public and representatives of residents' associations who are here in the room this evening. We also have Patrick from our Neighbourhood Plan steering group meeting who's joining us via Teams. And also Claire Bars as well, welcome to the meeting. Members of the public may only make representations during the public session only and may only speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. I will ask the Vice Chair to keep on time for us if that is needed. I think for the members that are here this evening, whilst this is a council meeting, we don't, probably very little decisions to be made this evening. But there are some points where we will be asked to make recommendations. Okay.
Yeah. Just make one point that as it is quite an unusual meeting and we are talking about the Neighbourhood Plan and we have a member of the steering group and members of the task forces, I wonder if you would consider either relaxing the standing order on members of the public speaking or moving the public speaking session to later on in the meeting when residents have had the opportunity to hear the discussion and they may have comments to make on the basis of what we've gone through during the meeting. It's a matter for you, obviously.
Members, are you happy to relax the rule? Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we will do. We'll do that. However, if we could kind of, for those online, if you could use the hand functionality on Teams to let us know when you want to speak, and also those in the room could indicate so we don't end up talking over each other, that would be great. Okay, so if we could go to formal agenda and councillors, apologies for absence.
Yes, apologies for absence from Councillor Brown and Councillor Hugh.
Thank you very much. And item 2, any declarations of interest in matters on the agenda?
Chair the steering group for the Neighbourhood Plan, so that's a...
Thank you, but I think you're okay there. Next item on the agenda, item 3, is to approve draft minutes of the meeting Tuesday the 9th of July 2024. As I always say, councillors should have read these minutes before coming to the meeting tonight, so I don't intend to go through them. Does anybody have any comments on this meeting they want to raise or haven't raised already? No, so I will take it that you are happy for me to sign off these minutes as being a true and accurate record of the meeting. Could you just indicate yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is any public speaking. As said, we are happy to relax our normal rules. So if you want to speak, if you would rather speak in context of the matters being discussed, then just kind of raise your hand, as I said, unless there's anything that anybody would like to say before we go into and the documentation? No, so I'll take it that we'll go ahead. Okay, we're down to item 5, which is to receive a presentation on progress with the Bletchley and Fenny Stratford Neighbourhood Plan.
Would you like me to start this off,
Yes,
Chair?
please.
Councillor Hussain and I have scrambled to get a presentation together tonight, which we struggled with all the other work that we've had on. But we have things to say and documents that are going to be that are in your pack, and we have a presentation that we do want to go through. But it's not a formal presentation with lovely whizzy PowerPoint. The first point that I thought we should mention in the context of the neighbourhood plan is that obviously everybody knows the new government's got planning firmly on the agenda, and Angela Rayner's made her announcements today about housing targets and so on. But there was no suggestion before the election from the Labour opposition or since the election that neighbourhood plans are in any way going to be diminished or done away with. So from that point of view, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't continue with the neighbourhood plan. And given the prominence that there is being given to housing, that's perhaps all the more reason to continue with the neighbourhood plan. We are in a complicated policy landscape because Milton Keynes Council obviously have their new local plan emerging. And Councillor Hussain and I attended a session that was specifically for local councils on the 22nd of July, and the presentation was designed to cover the main aspects of where the City Council is with its Regulation 18 consultation, which is now open, and also to specifically stress how the local plan might affect neighbourhood plans that are in preparation. So we've acquired the slides from that presentation. I can't present the presentation. What I can do is show the slides and talk you through them. And if people have got comments or questions or observations to make as we go through that presentation, I think it might be quite useful. And any questions that there are that we don't know the answers to, we can find out. So, John, could you share that presentation, please? I hope everyone's able to see it. So that's just their branding for the new city plan that replaces Plan MK and goes up to it takes us up to 2050. It's obviously based on the MK Futures plan that was done and a whole body of other evidence. That's the outline of what the presentation is about. Move on, please. And that first slide is just a sort of explanation of the Regulation 18 consultation, which is the one that's open now. So the draft plan is on, is available for everybody to consult on Milton Keynes' website. And later on in the presentation, there are some slides which show you where to go on the website to look at things. They've taken quite a different approach than they took with Plan MK. So all the evidence base on which the new city plan is based has been published at the same time as the draft plan has been published, which means that there's an absolute wealth of information on the website and it's quite difficult to find your way through it. On the front page, there is a link which takes you to a Word document of the actual plan, but there are also lots of other ways of dipping into it and dipping into the evidence. Anyway, that slide just shows you what it's all about. If you could move on, please, John. And then these are the main themes of the plan. So you've got people-friendly and healthy places, high-quality homes, climate and environment action, and economic and cultural prosperity. Those are the main themes of the local plan with a bit more information. And I'll share this presentation with everybody after the meeting. And each of those themes includes objectives. This is just a slide that talks about the way they've worked to prepare the plan so far. And it also gives you an indication of the timetable. And you can see that we're now in the final, if you go back to that slide, John, we're in the final segment of July to October 24, which is public consultation on the draft plan. Sorry, move on. Just a slide about the sort of engagement they've done. And then the next slide is quite useful because I think it shows you all the different bits of evidence that have gone in to make up the plan, and all that evidence is there on the website to dip into and look at. And then the next slide is all about the sustainability appraisal, which is quite a big piece of work that informs the plan. Lost my page. So the next slide, that really specifies what's the things that we're really going to be concerned about, what's in the plan. So it's going to include the whole breadth of strategic policies, housing allocations, targets, development management policies, and then the thing that everybody's most concerned about, and certainly that the other town and parish councils were particularly concerned about at the presentation that we went to, is the housing allocation. Now, the housing allocation could, of course, change depending on what's been announced today. I'm not okay with that, but at the time, last Monday, this is what they were expecting in terms of new homes over the period. So the housing targets are on that next slide. So there's a lower level and an upper level, and the reason that there's a band is obviously to allow the City Council a buffer so that they can be sure that they deliver the number of houses that they believe are needed based on their housing needs allocation. So they're calling that 53,256 is the number they're aiming for, and of those, over 14,000 have to be affordable homes. So those are key numbers really in terms of the plan. And then moving on to the next slide, which is a bit you can't see terribly well, but which is particularly interesting, is the allocation for different areas. And as it's difficult to see, I'll perhaps read it out. Would that be helpful? So completions and commitments between, so that's what they expect to do that's already under construction or already have planning permission between now and 2025. They're expecting up to 29,075 houses from the existing allocations, the current plan. Then Central Milton Keynes and Campbell Park are the places where the largest amount of development is going to be, and they're looking for 11,000 new houses there. Central Bletchley has an allocation of 1,000 houses, which is not dissimilar to the allocation in the last plan, Bletchley. The transport hubs, which are the growth areas around key stops where they imagine the mass rapid transit stops will be when the mass rapid transit routes agreed. They're looking for 2,500 there. And then there's some of the strategic sites which were identified in the last plan. So you've got Walton Campus strategic brownfield site, 1,600 homes. Wolverton Works, that site's been identified for a long time, it's only 400 houses. And then the Eastern Strategic City Extension, 7,500. East of Wavendon Strategic City Extension, 3,000. This is the bit that affects us most directly as well. Bow Brick Hill City Extension, 1,500. The Levante Gate Extension, 1,250. And Shenley Dens Strategic City Extension, 1,000. And then gathered together is 3,000 homes, which are all the small brownfield sites and Opportunity Heights sites and Windfall, less than less than 10 homes on them. So that's what makes up the total of 62,825, which is the top of their range for applications. The next slide.
These houses could be dwellings, so it could be apartments, it could be
yes, they're units, they're housing units. Yeah, they could be anything. Yeah. The next slide sort of highlights those key areas that have been mentioned in the slide above. It's not a particularly useful map, I don't think, unless you're looking at some of the map on the right hand side shows you the areas that have been identified around Brickhill and you can see that there's a lot of development right on the border, the county border, the city border. And the dotted line, the black dotted line, shows you the city border. I can't really say more about that because I can't tell you the key means because I couldn't understand it when I went to the presentation, certainly can't understand it now. And the next slide is the affordable housing, and this is really interesting for us again. So 14,331 affordable homes needed, and they are saying that their proposed strategy is to provide 32% of local housing need, or 27% of total allocated housing, and they're giving their 10-year split there. So 62% social rent, 22% affordable rent and 16% first homes. So that tenure is very interesting and is very relevant for our neighbourhood plan, that tenure mix that they're including in their plan. And the tenure is determined in part by the viability of the different developments, and they have identified 3 different viability areas. So they've got different tenure splits in different viability areas. So in the higher value areas, they're looking at 40% of affordable housing. Now we in Bletchley, Fenny, Stratford, we're in a medium value area. So they're looking at 25% in the area 2 housing viability. And then those areas which are area 3, and the only area that is area 3 is Milton Keynes Centre. They're looking at 15%. So the next slide, if you can go to it, shows that map. So we're contained within that blue area, which is the middle viability area, and obviously the more affluent areas are on the outskirts, and the 15% is in the middle.
So just for clarity, that would actually be a reduction because currently across Milton Keynes it's 30% affordable housing, and what they're doing is structuring it differently in the new plan.
That's as I understand it, but please don't quote me on it. That's my limited understanding. So the next slide, John, is also about the housing mix and the tenure. And this is the housing mix that they would like to have, but they're not prescribing it in the plan. So they've got statistics there of how many 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed and 4+ bed houses they would have and in what tenure, but they're not prescribing it within the plan. So they want a flexible approach, which is the approach they've got in the current plan. And so there'll be what they say there on that slide, and what they said at the presentation is that they will be looking at each site on its merits and the context of the site to determine what the right housing mix is on each development. The next slide, I'm whizzing through these, I realise, but there's not a lot I can say that's very useful to you, it covers the other policies that are going to be included. So all the things that you'd expect on climate change and so on the biodiversity and special landscape areas, opportunities for wind and solar, and policies on gypsy and traveller pitches, and there's quite a range of policies on central Milton Keynes. There is one policy in the plan on Bletchley, on central Bletchley, but it's not a very detailed. It's not unlike the policy that was in the last local plan for Bletchley. That's that timetable again on the next slide. So the regulation 18 consultation going on until towards the end of the year, and then the final draft will be out, and it will go to regulation 19 consultation next year, and the intention is that everything will be finished or be ready for independent examination in May 2025, all things being equal. And they're certainly very, very committed to their timetable. So these next few slides just show you what is on the Milton Keynes website and where to go, because it's quite daunting when you look at it all, where to go to get the information. So that first slide just shows you where all the information is. There is a video there which I don't think I can show you, but you can watch it on YouTube on Milton Keynes' site, which is sort of helping you find your way around the Milton Keynes site to look at the different documents. Then you've got on the next one, you've got an events button, so you can find out where the exhibitions and face-to-face consultations are taking place. And there's a list of them there. And at the moment, what we've got in Bletchley is one here at Newton Lees on the 3rd of September. And there's one in West Bletchley Community Centre on the 20th of September. I think quite a lot of people have said that they like more face-to-face engagement, but the City Council were quite clear when we went to the meeting that the face-to-face engagement has to be limited, and this is what they've committed to. Whether they'll do any more in response to resident concern, I don't know. And you've got on the next slide, there's the interactive maps, and I've had a look at some of the interactive maps, and they are quite useful, but you can't possibly get an impression of them from this, but you get the policy layering if you go through the interactive maps, and it's quite useful if you're looking at where the policies lie and how they overlay each other. And then there's the enormous section on the evidence base, which you can dip into should you wish to. And there's also the strategic housing, land availability assessment. So when it comes to responding to the consultation, they've done it in quite a different way from previously, and actually it's a lot more user friendly, I think, for ordinary members of the public to make responses to specific policies or specific parts of the plan. You can just click in and do the questionnaire on the policy that you're interested in. But of course, there'll be organisations who are making much more detailed responses. And I do feel, as clerk, that there's such a lot of information there, and it's all very important to us, given that we're producing a neighbourhood plan. I would advise the council to seek some professional advice in formulating a properly worded plan speak response to the local plan. And my suggestion would be that we use planning consultants who are already working with us on our neighbourhood plan, because they know what is developing to be in the neighbourhood plan. They can identify the policies that would impinge on our emerging policy, and they could help us formulate a a response to the plan in a way that will be most likely to convince the planning team at Milton Keynes Council. So this isn't on the agenda tonight, so we can't approve this tonight because I didn't think about this until after I've delivered the agenda. But we can put it on finance and approve if you're minded to approve that. Because I'm not a planner, we don't have anybody in the team who is a planner, and I do think it's an important thing to respond to it in a meaningful way.
We'll have a quote back by then.
We'll have a quote by next Tuesday, yeah. And then finally, there's the call for sites. If you go onto that page, the call for sites, they're looking for landowners. They haven't done a big call for sites, but they have to have on their website an opportunity for landowners to offer sites if they want, but they're not done a big call for sites. There's still the opportunity to do that. If you could whiz through, John, to the
call for sites here, yeah?
Neighbourhood plans.
This one?
Yeah. So this is what Milton Keynes City Council is saying about neighbourhood plans. They still be important. They've got strategic policies in the main plan on sites and allocations, but you know, neighbourhood plans can still bring forward sites for development should they wish to, and our neighbourhood plan could. The main impact they're saying is likely to be on policies around affordable housing. And I think that's really interesting because that's the thing that the steering group have been discussing most recently, the tenure mix that we would like to see in Bletchley. And I think based on the discussions we've had so far, our preference on tenure mix might not necessarily match what is likely to be in the city plan. The thinking of the steering group was that they'd like to see, with affordable housing, they'd like to see more tenures, more ownership tenures, in order to encourage a more, as they saw it, a more settled population, which was more invested in the future of the community. Having said that, the steering group also recognises the very great need for rented accommodation, and the plan has got to get through referendum. So any tenure mix that is decided on in the plan will have to sort of accommodate both those sorts of demands, really. So you'll see that they're saying if you're thinking of creating or reviewing a neighbourhood plan, come and speak to us. Well, we are already in dialogue with them, and we will be having meetings with them as we go forward through the next few weeks. And that's the presentation that we had. Most of the questions that were at the event we went to were about, well, they were very specific, weren't they, to individual parishes, unfortunately for us, because, you know, obviously it was very important for those individual councils, but, you know, what was more helpful is the sort of broader question. So if anyone's got any questions that they'd like me to ask City Council at this stage, please do speak now or come back to me after the meeting with a question.
So anyone have any questions that they would like asked? Some information, Councillor.
The implications of the city plan on the neighbourhood plan are very significant, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because if they've included and it gets approved within the city plan, a neighbourhood plan cannot change it. They won't allow it because they'll just quote policies at you that will take precedence. So it's essential that we as a town council, this policy, the consultation consultants you're referring to is absolutely critical to us, because unless that our thoughts and our wishes aren't included in the city plan, then it doesn't matter what the neighbourhood plan does, it won't be included. So we've got to make sure that is done. I mean, there's policies within the city plan that I don't like, and I know Newton Lees won't like. So it's got to be comprehensive.
Yeah, I think it's right to say that the neighbourhood plan has to be in general, it has to be in conformity with the local plan, and as this local plan is emerging, it's pointless as putting anything in our neighbourhood plan. We're probably not going to produce ours more quickly than them anyway, but it's pointless as putting anything in that isn't in conformity. But having said that, there are refinements that can be put in the neighbourhood plan, but they can't go against the basic policies in there. But you can sort of put more in.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo exactly what you're saying. I mean, the MK City Plan can trump the local neighbourhood plan, but I think that almost makes the neighbourhood plan even more significant for us, because that really provides that evidence and database that we can use to go back to MK City Council and actually influence the city plan in that sense. And of course, going back with our consultants as the initial step is very critical. We need to put a response forward. But I mean, moving forward, if we make a suggestion for the MK City plan, if we've got a big document which has got a lot of research and evidence and data, and it's gone through a referendum which has been backed by the local by the public, I mean, that's going to be a lot of ammunition to go back and actually influence that MK City plan. So, yeah, in my opinion, it makes the neighbourhood plan even more important, because there is a MK City plan there.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Thank you.
So you're happy for me to sort of put on the agenda for finance and governance a proposal to fund some professional support? Thank you. Right, so turning to the neighbourhood plan now, away from the city plan, let's just have a reminder of our progress with the neighbourhood plan. So, believe it or not, we started talking about this in 2019. That's when we first started talking about whether or not we wanted a neighbourhood plan, and our first indicative timetable said it would all be finished by December 2022, which seems quite funny now. But we decided that we definitely do the plan in January 2020, and obviously then COVID happened. So we just nicely got our area approved in May 2020, and then we were really struggling to do things for quite a while. The steering group was set up in October 2021, and we did quite a lot of engagement in 2021, and the early part of 2022. We had workshops, and we did we did various consultations, and then in June 2022 we appointed O'Neill Homer as our consultants following an extensive process. And then after that we set up 2 task forces, and from the end of 22 into 2023 those task forces did a lot of work at gathering evidence, talking to us, helping to produce policy ideas. And at the end of 2023, our consultants came up with some suggested emerging policy ideas, not policies, but emerging policy ideas. We then consulted with the community on those in January 24. And the consultation, as I've reported to you previously, was a bit mixed because it was a very complex set of policies to consult on, and I think we learned quite a lot from that. And then unfortunately, we've had a bit of a hiatus since January and February this year, with partly because of the elections and various other things that have been happening. But we had, it felt like the steering group had stalled a bit. And we've got different membership following the annual meeting of council. But we are ready to sort of move on to the next stage, because we've now got quite a lot of additional evidence from the technical packs that were funded by locality to help us develop our policies. So the strategic environment assessment has been produced, and the housing needs assessment has been produced, and a final version was agreed only last week, I think, with locality. and I'm waiting for the final version to come back. So on your desk, on the tables today, there is an executive summary for members of the housing needs assessment. It says draft on it because it isn't finalised. Locality have to come back with it, and I don't want it to be published anywhere or circulated anywhere because it's definitely a draft document. But it's when they did their housing needs assessment, they felt we needed more than 1,000 dwellings in Bletchley. And the steering group and the consultants advised us to not go over what was in the local plan. So we went back to ACOM and said, you reduce that so that it's in conformity with the local plan. So they reduced that to 1,000. So our evidence base says the same as our urging local plan is saying. And we've also had some of the amendments to make, but they weren't as significant. And I do urge everybody to read this executive summary. It's only about 5 pages, 6 pages, and it just really does spell out what the housing need is in Bletchley. And so we've got all that evidence to work on. And the next steps of the steering group are to continue to review the emerging policy ideas in the context of this additional evidence and the context of the emerging Neighbourhood Plan. But we'll talk some more about the next steps in the final agenda item. So that's that on that one. And now it is to lead the review of the policy, emerging policies.
Okay.
If you're happy with that, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. So next item on the agenda, item 6, to review and comment on draft policies within the plan. Should have an item in your pack. Have we got that, John, to share?
Yeah.
Yes. Give me a second now. There you go. So it starts off by actually having some descriptions of some areas. So at the top, central Bletchley, this will remain an important district centre with modern shopping and cultural offer and a social hub along Queensway, with better car parking, redevelopment of derelict land on its edges, and adding new homes to add new vitality. Next area, Fenny Village. This will become a thriving urban community with a coordinated programme of brownfield site redevelopment to deliver new homes, improve the public realm and parking on Aylesbury Street, and to make the Grand Union Canal more a part of the community. Newton Lees. This will be enhanced as a sustainable community with better access to local facilities. Water Eaton will remain an important part of the history of the Bletchley and Valley Stratford area. Denby. This will continue to thrive, an essential part of our commercial, industrial and leisure future. Eaton Lees, there is no land use strategy proposed for this site at the present time, as evaluation identified there is limited scope for development. Going on to page 2.
Chair, can I just say, so the spatial plan, these two policies, the spatial plan BFS 1 and 2,
Yes.
I think we've identified, based on the discussions we've had about housing and housing tenure, that we need to strengthen this by saying more about the actual housing allocations we want to see in the housing tenure. So this is where they probably go in,
Okay.
or they might be another separate policy. Also, now that we've got a member from Eaton Lees, there may be some thoughts about Eaton Lees.
And of course, this is the point to actually say them. Right, so should we go through the other policy ideas, and starting off on Queensway, description is Queensway is a busy shopping area that will be boosted by redevelopment of the Brunel Centre to create new retail, leisure and community facilities. With more people living in and around Queensway, it is expected to be able to maintain the number of commercial units from the new Brunel Centre to Princes Way. There is expected to be a healthy demand for those units, primarily from local independent traders and businesses, and a continuing increase in non-retail commercial uses. There should therefore be no need for it to become smaller. The The policy idea is to encourage more investment in Queensway by property owners through sensitive plot redevelopment rather than poor building conversions, and to discourage changes of use on the main road frontage to residential uses. Does anybody have any comments that they want to make about Queensway? I know that I have seen a lot of stuff on social media, and lots of individuals have expressed that, oh, not more flats. But I think it's important to kind of note that it is a bit of we won't get the investment in Bletchley without development in Bletchley, and what we have to kind of decide is what is acceptable, what we believe is acceptable development. And I think people may prefer houses, but in a town centre location, very difficult to build houses, and you won't get the quantum of money that is needed to come in. But I think this is an opportunity to throw this out to councillors and members of the other groups if they wanted to say anything at this point.
Two things, Chair. Firstly, you've only got to look to city centre, the development there. There's no housing going in there. It's all flats, because that's the only style of development and the amount of land space that you've got. But the second thing with that is that there's no mention of the transport hub, which is linked to Queensway, which I think is a major omission. I mean, by 2050, we would hope there will be an east-facing station with linkage into Queensway. There's no mention of that in that part, and I think there should be, together with whatever bus, cycle provision, car parking there should be. Well, no, car parking is mentioned, isn't it? But certainly the transport hub isn't, which I think is an omission.
Anyone else? Then Ron.
I'd like to second that, but on page 67 online, we've got number 1, transport hub. It does say connectivity is special.
It's Queensway edges. So it's different policies.
Policy.
Oh, well, yeah, but it links, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we need that east facing station, that's what.
Obviously, as you said, being a town centre, housing is very difficult. And I think the only way to go is flats, but not sky-high flats, reasonably sized flats. And what I'm noticing is they keep saying affordable housing, but we're not getting a lot of social housing in the area, which is needed. I think all over Milton Keynes, we need social housing. I think the idea is good, for the development for the shops.
Going back to the presentation that the clerk did, so I think it can be confusing, but affordable housing, what they're saying is if there was 100 houses done, that 25% in our area would be affordable housing. And I can't really do the maths quick, but 62% of that 25% would actually be socially rented housing. And then I think it was 16% for first homes. And then there was another, which I think is affordable market rent. So this is actually closer to the market rent of that would be. So the market would be like a private house. So actually, what they are saying in their policy, in the big plan, MK City Plan, is almost 2/3 of the 25% of the properties that are built would have to be affordable housing.
They don't call it social housing, no, and it's a shame because we all know what that means. And affordable housing is really natural. But that's what they're talking about. They're talking about those social type of tenures with
that's what worries me. They say affordable housing. Also, so well, where's the social housing? Well, we couldn't really build them, so we've had to make them all affordable.
No, they're not two different things. They're not two different things.
Have we got an update from the town building?
On what?
On the public realm?
Yes, well, as I've notified you before, the public consultation in several emails and at meetings, the public consultation starts, we had some consultation at Big Street Eat on Saturday, but the actual formal consultation starts at the end of this week and it goes on to the end of September on both public realm and the transport hub. And that evidence that's gained from that will also be able to be fed in to the neighbourhood plan. But that's the position with it. I don't think we can get into the detail of that, but you'll definitely be able to see it as from the end of this week.
So just going back to the policy idea about Queensway, some of the items that's been mentioned may be covered in other policies that we've noted. If anybody have any other comments or questions about Queensway before we move on to the next one? For me, I think that we need to be more specific about what community facilities are. I know that we have had lots of comments around the size of doctor surgeries, there not being land mass in order to extend them, and actually we might want to see more of a health hub developed in the town centre, if that can be kind of achieved. Rather than just saying generic community facilities, because there's a worry that actually they think community centre, and actually I think it's the main issue that people talk to me about. It's about health. I don't know if anybody else has got any.
I think the banking hub was mentioned as well, about a multi-use banking hub via all the sort of like different branches, using it as a one day Lloyds, one day Barclays, one day NatWest, or whatever the situation would be. So to get some clarification on banking. I think that commercially, there are some commercial, if there is going to be a hub type situation with commercial and residential combined, we have to make sure that if any houses are built, that infrastructure goes in behind that. You said doctor surgeons, dentists and stuff like that. So it's getting the clarification on that side of things. But I do believe that, you know, if Bletchley is going to survive, we are going to need more footfall. And more footfall means building more flats. And for us to get new money coming into Bletchley, new investment, we are going to need more houses, flats. And that's new people coming into the area, new money, new investment, people taking on shops.
I'm going to move on to the next item because we've got quite 13 of these to get through. So the next policy idea is Queensway edges. The properties on Queensway back onto Corkwell Way and Fenny Way, and these have the potential to be converted into new residential streets if much of the parking can be relocated to better locations in the town centre. Policy idea is therefore that the land along Corkwell Way, Albert Street to Cambridge Street, is developed to create a new residential street of 2- and 3-storey mews cottages and townhouses with improvements to the public realm of Oxford Street and Bedford Street. Land along Fenny Way, Oliver Road to Lennox Road is redeveloped to create a new residential street of 2- and 3-storey new mews cottages and townhouses with improvements to the public realm of Brooklands Road and Westfield Road. Any comments in relation to this?
That policy continues on to the next.
Oh, sorry. This policy is therefore that as part of the Fenny Way improvements and redevelopment of the Brunel Centre, the library and Ravenscroft building on Westfield Road are relocated into new buildings on Queensway, and the site is redeveloped with the adjoining car wash site for a scheme of terraced houses fronting the two roads and around a rear courtyard. A new multi-storey car park is either built as part of the redevelopment of the Brunel Centre or on the current car park site of Albert Street, with a new terrace of 2- and 3-storey townhouses on the western side of Albert Street. At the other end of Queensway, some industrial land fronting onto Bull Lane is redeveloped for new mews cottages. That is Queensway edges.
Can I just speak to this? So this was the policy idea that was most contentious in the consultation we did in January. People didn't like it. And what we found when we were consulting was that people didn't understand that the housing density that's already been agreed for the centre of Bletchley, that's already 120 houses per hectare, whatever it is. So that's the density we face, and can't change that, and there's no chance of that changing in the new plan. It's not there. So I think, you know, remembering what neighbourhood plans can do is they can say, we understand we've got to have development. If we've got to have high-rise development, we like it all together around Brunel, where the Albert Street development is. We'd like the high-rise there. And where there are Victorian streets existing already, we'd like lower-rise developments there. So I think it's actually quite important that you consider site-specific policies. And the library, we talked to people about the library, and again, people were, I mean, the Westfield thing's been superseded by the planning application. But that, you know, it shows why we need to get going with the neighbourhood plan. I think Milton Keynes Council might have their eye on that site because they do own it. They might have their eye on it for something else. But what we were trying to say to residents when we did the consultation was, if the library moves, what would you like to see on that site? And what happened was residents couldn't get past the idea of losing the library. But the library won't stay on that site, I don't think, indefinitely. That building's not fit. So it will move eventually. So having some site-specific policies on Queensway edges is probably a good idea if we're not too late.
And let's be really kind of adult about this. Having a health facility and a library on the high street might actually bring more people to High Street and actually take them away. And whilst they're here, they might shop somewhere else. And I know that I know of a building in Luton which sits on top of the shopping centre, which actually was empty for 10 years, and it was actually bought by the local council and the NHS and Department of Justice, and now they have a health centre in the town centre which is run by the local hospital, where you can go and get all of your blood tests whilst shopping. And this has actually brought lots of people into the town. The courts are there, all of the adult learning services are there, and it just brings everyone into the town centre. So this could actually be a good idea. Eamon.
As long as the shops can be serviced properly from the rear, there's no problem with building houses. There's loads of repair. I don't see it as any problem whatsoever. Did you mention Ball Lane?
Ball.
Yeah, it goes behind the chemist up to the fish and chip shop in Victoria Road. What are you going to do with that?
So my understanding was at the other end of Queensway, some industrial land fronting onto Bull Lane is redeveloped for new Muse cottages. So I think that's what the clerk said, is actually, you know, massing any kind of high rise in one area, but actually reflecting the local community.
I think they'd be pleased with that because they own Bull Lane.
Yeah.
People who live in Napier Street, and it's never been repaired in 50 years.
It's not adopted, is it?
No, it's not adopted yet.
It would be nice to get it adopted.
So having had those applications, having had those comments, sorry, was Ron.
And Andrew.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Andrew Raven-Agard. So although I live in West Bletchley, I have worked on the development task team, and and my part of the development task team was actually to work on the Queensway area. So I'm really familiar. I took 560 photos of the whole area with this thing. Towards the end of last year, we had the Brunel Centre, Sainsbury's development brief, and part of that, as Richard just said, was, you know, to have an idea was to have the health hub, banking hub, toilets, and everything else. So, you know, it may not, if it's not possible to actually cite this on Queensway, bearing in mind that the brief that's come out from the King's Council is to put something like that on the Brunel, you know, Sainsbury's site. I mean, that would be a really good move, I believe.
I'll just ask, what's about Brunel Trade Resident Association? Just one thing, the question of Ravenscroft and the library. no mention is made of what we refer to as a rest centre. Was there any thought given to
Well,
that?
the rest
Or not
centre-
to that as well?
I think was included in Raven's comment, and I think what they were saying was that they'd like to see that potentially relocated into a new community hub, if there was such a thing, which you know, that's what we were thinking about as a group, and that's what the consultants were suggesting. Now that we know that's going to be a planning application, that might all change. And we weren't able to get as much specificity into the development brief for the Brunel Centre as we as a town council would like. We put forward quite a lot of representations to say precisely what we wanted, and a lot of that was rejected because essentially the development brief's a marketing document to get somebody to agree to come and develop. So I feel we need to strengthen the policies that were in the Central Bletchley Urban Development Framework, which were stronger than what was in the brief. And there's no sign that that document is being, what I've been told is that that will continue, that SPD will continue alongside the local plan until such times as it's replaced. So we can still make reference to that in terms of all this.
Eamon.
The road going through is out of the question now then.
The road going through?
To chop the end off of Brunel Centre and punch the road straight.
The SPD did not say that traffic would go through. It said it would open up the vista. If you read it carefully, it said it
I was just thinking more of buses going through.
Oh, I think there's scope for that. When you see the public realm consultation and the transport hub, there is more scope for buses being in different places. So I think there's still scope for a change, but the SPD was more ambitious because it was wanting to see things like co-op being pushed back and a wider space and more open vista. And now Milton Keynes Council seem to be thinking they might keep the Wilco building, whereas we kind of hope that might get demolished as well to open the vista up. I don't know yet.
The Wilco building for the road being pushed through wouldn't be in the way.
In the way.
That's where Barclays Bank was.
Yeah, but out of keeping them there. Brand new, so looking.
Just that when they start talking about community hubs and so on, they sometimes try to draw the town council into some of those things. Now, our criteria and our needs have changed dramatically in the last 10 years, whereas at one stage they were talking about creating a community hub, which would include town council offices, Milton Keynes council offices and so on. Well, we don't necessarily need that anymore because we've moved on. Milton Keynes Council, or the plan didn't, but we have. So I think that we must make sure that we don't get dragged into providing facilities that we don't any longer need.
I don't think they can make us do that through a planning document. I think there is a need for public space in the town centre because at the moment there's nowhere to hold an exhibition or have a community meeting in the town centre. That doesn't be us that provide that, does it?
No, indeed, it doesn't.
Okay. So, any comments? Anyone, Claire or Patrick, any comments you would like to make?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, not so far.
Thank you. Okay, so are we happy with those items that have been explained?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go on to BFS4, which is Fenny Urban Village. The policy idea is to identify industrial and car parking sites with the potential for redevelopment. Redeveloping older industrial land at the back of Wharfside and on Aylesbury Street for a mix of commercial and business, residential and live-work units to connect Aylesbury Street to the canal and to Walnut Drive with a new pedestrian link to encourage those walking from east to east to enjoy Aylesbury Street. Redeveloping industrial land behind Watling Street and Simpson Road to deliver new homes to form a new frontage into the canal. redeveloping industrial land at Watling Terrace, to delivering new homes and form a new frontage to the roads. The policy idea is to identify further redeveloping industrial and car parking land at the back of George Street, Denmark Street and Aylesbury Street, new two-storey terraced homes with some replacement public parking provided as part of the Aylesbury Street public realm scheme. Redeveloping commercial land at 16 to 26 Tavistock Street for a new terraced housing scheme, and developing the vacant plot on the corner of Staple Hall Road and Watling Street for a landmark residential building. Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, so I'll take it that we're happy with that policy idea and we'll move on.
Yep.
Okay. BFS 5, Aylesbury Street. Aylesbury Street has a low vacancy rate and has evolved over the last few years to switch from retail to other commercial and cultural uses. Improving the public realm and arrangement of on-street parking will help to bolster its future success, especially if there are more homes built nearby and if it is better connected to walking from the surrounding area. The policy idea is to encourage more investment in Aylesbury Street by property owners by encouraging the retention of their ground floors in active commercial use and by discouraging changes of use on the main road frontage to residential uses. Any comments or questions?
Can we take back the parking, please? The bloke's moved on who stole all the signs. Can we take it back?
I'll make a note of that. I have been in touch with them about.
We spent £185,000 doing that.
Okay, any comment on the policy?
Support.
Okay, we support. Thank you. BFS 6, Canal Side. The Grand Union Canal through Fenny has the potential to see more development along its length, and another policy idea of the plan is to see it designated as a heritage asset in its own right. The scale, orientation and appearance of buildings next to canals is important if their special character is to be enhanced by development. The policy idea is to define some essential design characteristics of the canal through Fenny to create a simple design code that all development schemes that lie next to it should comply with. Any comments on questions on this?
Are they suggesting housing and so on along the frontage of the canal, between the canal and is it Pinewood Drive?
We're on the other side, aren't we? We're
I'm on the
simple roadside, aren't we? Or we back the other side.
on the east side. No, not on the west side.
I think the policy is about the length of the canal on both sides.
On both sides, yeah. So new city heating side, all the way down to the railway bridge, to the red line. Yeah.
I think this policy idea arose from concerns about drive, which don't really connect with the canal at all, and the fact that the canal is seen as a heritage and nature asset, so development should be in keeping with that. I don't think specific sites have been identified along the canal side, but this could be.
We did get drawings for new city heating. Went for and brought the drawings in for the area where their firm was. So I don't know who owns the land now, whether they sold it or.
Don't know.
It's over 5 years ago, so